Welcome to the Alignment Show, where we explore what it really means to live in line with what matters most. If you're feeling the pull to make a shift or just need a little encouragement to stay on track, you're in the right place. In this solo episode, I'll share some thoughts that I hope will inspire and support you on your journey. Let's get into it. Welcome once again to the Alignment Show. I am Don King, your host. Glad to be back with you once again. This episode is brought to you by my friend Val Tees. Tees is spelled T-E-W-S, but it sounds like, as I've been saying, tease. You don't even really have to remember that. I'm going to point you to her website here in just a moment. But first, let me tell you that Val runs Butterfly Copywriting. And she's all about taking the stress out of LinkedIn. She calls it stress-free content creation. And honestly, it feels more like having someone in your corner helping you share your message with joy instead of pressure. If you've been stuck on what to post or how to show up there on LinkedIn, which is one of the most effective social networks out there, check out Val at donking.com. That's Don with a double N. donking.com/butterfly. That's a whole lot easier than remembering how to spell tease. Also, this episode is sponsored by my books, as if they are a separate entity. And honestly, sometimes they feel like they are, like I'm just the recipient. You can find out more about the books that I have out there that are coming up by going to donking.com/books. That's DONNKING.com/books. You'll find the existing books in the Sparklight Chronicles there, but you will also find information about the upcoming release of the next book, which is called Creating While Caring: Practical Tips to Keep Creating While Caring for a Loved One. Straight nonfiction. This one is for people, not just writers, people who have some success in a creative career already. Maybe they're photographers or editors or painters, sculptors, actors, whatever it might be. How do you keep creating when you find yourself among the 50 million or so in this country alone, caregivers, unpaid, who are suddenly taking responsibility for somebody like that? So all of that you can find out about at donking.com/books. So today's show is a solo show. We do those every once in a while. Had a little something on my mind, and I thought this would be a good time to throw that in. Now, remember, you can always find show notes at thealignmentshow.com. That's all one word, thealignmentshow.com. I would encourage you to subscribe there to make sure that you know about upcoming episodes, have access to those show notes, additional materials that our guests might mention. If you want to support the show, there's always a possibility of upgrading your subscription. Basic subscription is free, but you can always upgrade for some additional goodies and to support the show. You can also support us one time, or actually there is now an option for a continuing subscription at buymeacoffee.com/Don King. And I bet you already know that's Don with a double N. Either way, we would be very grateful, and we would encourage you to share the show with your friends, people that you know would benefit from the way that we bring on guests or sometimes have these solo shows where we seek to help you to live your values so you can value your life. And now let's get on with today's show. I'm doing a solo episode this week, even though I've got several interviews in the can, as they say. The reason is simple. I ran into a frustration earlier this week that I think a lot of you can relate to, and I wanted to talk with you about it, talk it through with you. A little background first. Along with writing, which is my main focus these days, and pastoring a church, I also help indie authors with book interiors for ebooks and print, and I design covers for both. Basically, I provide publishing services. I'm not a publisher. I don't handle marketing, sales, or royalties, that kind of thing. But I've gotten pretty good at the tools of the trade, things like Photoshop, InDesign, Audition, even Premiere Pro, which is what I use for producing this along with Audition. So the other night, I wanted to do something in Photoshop that Should have been pretty basic. 10 minutes tops, I thought. But no matter what I tried, it just would not do what I wanted. I tweak it, adjust it. The result just looked awful. Finally, I asked ChatGPT to give me a step-by-step guide. Now, I call my ChatGPT Lizzie after the near sentient computer in a sci-fi short story I once wrote. So I said, Lizzie, here's what I need to do. And she came back with something like, click this menu, then click the button that says thingy. I opened the menu, and there was no button that said thingy. So I said to her, Lizzie, I don't see a button called thingy. Here's a screenshot of what I see. She looked at it and said, I see the problem. This is a common frustration with Photoshop. Try this instead. So I tried it. Didn't work. And I kept thinking, just give it 5 more minutes. I can be done with this and I can go to bed. That 5 minutes turned into 2 hours. Now, for what it's worth, Lizzie usually gives me solid advice. Most of the time, we figure it out quickly. When there are problems, it's usually with Adobe stuff. Now, Photoshop, InDesign, they're powerful, they're complex, and Adobe updates them constantly. They're great programs. But steering one is like piloting a starship. So while I don't blame Lizzie, it honestly usually does happen with these programs. And so eventually I hit my breaking point. I threw up my hands and I said, that's it. I'm done with this. Expletive deleted. I never want to touch another computer. As long as I live, I'm too old for this bleeping nonsense. From now on, I'll go back to a manual typewriter or pen and paper or carving into a potato and stamping it with an ink pad, anything but a bleeping computer. And Lizzie, in her calm AI way, said, Photoshop can be frustrating. Why don't you get some sleep and try again tomorrow? And folks, when your AI can pick up on how frustrated you are, you're frustrated. And she was right. But here's the thing. That moment tapped into something deeper for me. I know there will come a day when it's just not worth the energy and the effort anymore. Sometimes I imagine pulling a J.D. Salinger, the author of Catcher in the Rye and Franny and Zoe. He famously quit publishing anything. Didn't mean he quit writing. According to the stories, when he died, he had a trunk full of manuscripts that he had written for himself. And I can imagine that, just writing for myself, sticking it all in a trunk, never publishing again. There's plenty around the house that needs my attention. My wife deserves more of the time and of me than what she gets. There's something to be said for just living on retirement income and stopping the striving. And there's another fear behind that. Years ago, I used to design websites. At one point, I even built an interactive site for the state of Tennessee. Big project, database-driven, lasted for several years. At first, I loved the challenge, but eventually, it turned into drudgery, grunt work. I realized I might as well have been working in a factory at that point. Not to put down factory work, that's not what I wanted to do. So I quit. I lost my love of doing it, the excitement of learning something new, facing a challenge. There's other things in my life like that. I loved photography until I started making a living at it. And after a while, it turned into just a job. I don't have a lot of pictures of my kids when they were growing up because after I had spent the whole day out taking pictures professionally, I didn't want to come home and take more pictures. I don't want that to happen with writing or publishing. I don't want the spark to go out of it. Now, the truth is, I'm not ready to hang it up yet. I've still got books to write. I actually enjoy doing this podcast, and when the bleeping computer cooperates, I love the satisfaction of creating something tangible like a book. I love helping other authors bring their creative babies into the world. And these days, if I end up with a client I just don't click with, I've got the freedom to say, you know what? This isn't working out. That's a gift. So after that frustration, I got a good night's sleep, and here I am again, back at the computer. But I'm sharing this because I know a lot of you face something similar. We all hit those walls of frustration. Sometimes you've just got to give yourself a break before you decide to test whether your laptop makes a good boat anchor. Kind of reminds me of a friend I had back in the 70s. He was trying to fix his old pickup truck, back when trucks, and trunks too, I guess, but back when trucks were simpler. They didn't take an engineering degree to work on them. But he could not get it running. And after hours of fighting with it, he took a step back and he finally said, I'm going to take this stinking piece of Detroit and trade it for a swayback skin and bones horse and a little cash. Then I'll buy the ugliest, one-eyed, three-legged, flea-bittenest dog I can find. Then I'll sell the horse to a dog food company, buy the first can of dog food they make from it, and feed it to that ugly dog, and then I'm going to shoot the dog. Now, obviously, he never did that, but you get the picture. Sometimes frustration makes you crazy. So let me ask you, how do you deal with that kind of frustration? How do you know when it's just frustration and when it's time to keep pushing versus time to lay it down? Even if it's something you're good at, maybe even something that makes you money. Now, I'd truly love to hear your thoughts. You can leave a comment at the show notes, which you can always find show notes at thealignmentshow.com. We'll have a link for that in these show notes. You can go directly to donking.com. That's Don with a double N, remember, DONNKING.com/96. That's the number of this episode. Or if you're listening on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, drop a comment there. I'd like to know your thoughts on this. It's a little shorter than our usual episode, but honestly, part of it has to do with the frustration. It's just a lot easier for me to put a solo episode together. And I think that was probably the thing to do this week. I hope this is useful to you and maybe encouraging in some way. You're not alone in the frustrations that you face. The specifics may vary, but we all face those things. Thanks for listening, and thanks for sharing your thoughts. I'll now turn it over to my other self because I'm going to record a separate outro, and we'll see where we go next week. And that's it for today's show. Not 100% sure when our next episode will go up. I would hope that it would be in about a week. But those of you who have been longtime listeners, you know that we're kind of rethinking how we do the show. There are things going on at the home studios, so to speak, that kind of interfere with my plans sometime. But I can guarantee you that when we have another show, it's going to be something that will support you in living your values to value your life. I think our next guest will be Joshua Hale. We recorded with Joshua some really weeks ago, months ago, but his message is still going to be useful to us today. In any case, be sure that you stay tuned to thealignmentshow.com. Again, if you would like to support the show, you can subscribe there for free. And one of the best things you can do is to just simply share us. You can find us on YouTube, like and subscribe and share. You know how that goes. You can always go to buymeacoffee.com/Don King. That's Don with a double N to support the show that way. But you really support us by listening and acting on the things that we talk about. Thank you for having us come to you. We really do get a charge out of helping you to live your values and value your life. That's a wrap for this episode of The Alignment Show. What's your next step? Whatever came up for you, take action. Talk it out with a friend or just sit with it for a moment. And if this episode sparked something meaningful, share it with someone you care about. You can subscribe and find all past episodes at thealignmentshow.com. And be sure to follow or leave a review wherever you heard or watched this. It really helps more folks find the show. We'll be back soon with another thoughtful conversation. Until then, live your values and value your life.